All right, so what's so different here from when we composited our landscape is this doesn't have any kind of atmosphere to it. We want everything to be sharp, lit, in focus. I'm not even adjusting the colors yet. Instead, I am just going to try to get these components kind of seamed together for the head, because this is when I have the most kind of creative leeway. Now, sometimes it's very helpful to play with some direct adjustments. So for instance, for these eyes, I can transform them, I can distort them, kind of make them match what I have a little bit better, but I can also play with their coloring. And it's all about that direction line of my sketch. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, just to brighten these eyes, because I already have kind of quite a bit of a highlight on the top of the head. So these eyes need to have some brightness in there, and a little bit of darkness too. Not so much that I lose pixel content. But you can see in the histogram how the whites kind of cut short of the edge. So if I just bring that highlight slider right to that edge, that will give me pure whites again, which are helpful. Okay. Now I want to transition certain edges, right? I want to transition this hard edge into this soft edge. So I go back to my beetle layer, and I'm going to use my eraser this time at 100% opacity with 0% hardness. And I'm just going to bite away and soften completely that edge. And it will reveal where I don't have enough overlap, like where that kind of orange is leaking through. It will feather together some of this fur texture with the puppy dog eyes underneath. And then I want the hard edge here. So I don't need to worry about the feathering so much. In fact, I might want to reestablish that hard edge on this part. So it's a hard texture going against a soft texture. Now I can go back to these eyes, Command T, make sure I'm on the eyes, yep, Command T, transform, I'm not sure why the box is so large for it, and then just warp it a little bit. I might not see my warp tools. I might have a selection going I'm not aware of. Yeah, a tiny little selection. So deselect, Command D. Let's try that again. The eye layer, Command T, there we go. The warp. And I just need to warp it ever so slightly so it closes this gap in there. See? So this is kind of why it's like an engine, and making sure everything fits together in the way you want. And now I can go back to that beetle layer, which is on top, and go back to my eraser and start transitioning with that soft-edged eraser. So animals and creatures, they have different kind of surfaces, right? This is a soft-edged surface, this fur. So I can leave it a little less defined. So it's really nice to have this pressure-sensitive tablet to show that edge. And now here, this highlight is part of the beetle. I don't want that highlight there. And I don't want to show the orange underneath, because that's not my creature design. This is more my creature design. So just like I used dodge to highlight that edge, I can use burn which is in the same drawer, with the same settings, an exposure of less than 20, set to the midtones, with a basic pressure-sensitive brush, 0% hardness, large but not too large, and now I can darken the midtones on the exposure that we see. Now if I do this on shadows, it's just going to go to black really quickly. But this will kind of give me that shadow underneath that top of the headpiece. But it will only affect the pixels of that layer. So if I want to darken into here a little bit to kind of turn that form, looks like the surface of an avocado right now. I called him Avocado Head in elementary school. That can work. And then I can apply that same burn to the puppy's eyes underneath to kind of show that shading. And it's only going to affect the midtone. So if something's too bright, like those white hairs, it's not going to affect it. Unless I really get in there. Now, dodge and burn have interesting effects in that they will start to saturate, like add more color. Generally, when you burn, it adds more color to midtones. And when you dodge, it can add more color to midtones. It will take color away from the extremes. So there's the third tool, which is called the sponge tool. And that's to help you. So that's a really good instance right here. You see how it's adding too much saturation, too much color as I darken those midtones. So the third tool in that drawer is the sponge tool, and you set the sponge tool to either saturate or desaturate. Desaturate is much more common. Again, we use this at under 20%, soft, large brush. And I can use this to take down that emphasis in the color where it doesn't fit, where it kind of flares up. Sometimes this is quite subtle. I needed a little bit on this underside of the beetle, so I switched layers there. And if you use it too much, it will just go to gray and look really dead. But you just do it a little bit, and it will be what you need. All right, and now kind of fine-tuning. This is the engine. So I can use my 0.8 feathering with my lasso and kind of finely cut out these little parts, revealing the eyes. And then I just need to work with now the transition from the eyes to this face part. There. So I'm going to take the eye layer, and now I'm going to play with the eraser at 100%, soft, largish, and softening these edges. Make sure nothing is selected. Oh, why am I on clone stamp? Eraser. There we go. We're going to be learning how to use the clone stamp later. But first we make the most of the references we have. Now I kind of like this bright stripe, but it's just going to be like the merest little soft ridge above the mandible. And that soft-edged eraser can help with that illusion of scales giving way to fur. Same thing with the fur around the eyes. Now, if you're a really professional and seasoned creature designer, with all of these decisions, you're actually coming up with rationales for why. Why would this creature have fur around their eyes? Why would they have a hard shell at the top of their head? What is it about their environment that requires that, right? and mine's going to be placed into a candyscape, right? So it might be because there's frequent peppermint rain. You need to be protected. And that the cotton candy clouds can get really stingy in the eyes and impede your vision. So you need little hairs that can catch it before it hits the sensitive parts of your pupil. And there's even a whole era or area of concept art called xenobiology, which is trying to understand, make rationalizations for why fantasy creature anatomy might be the way it is, right? For kind of alien or unknown creatures. And that's incredibly important when you're doing like a really prestigious, serious science fiction film. Your designs need to match what would be believable for those conditions. All right, here we have a little bit of a problem. And that's that I have the white extending right to there on this side, but extending further on this side. And so I think the most elegant solution is to just delete more from this side so that they match. So you're thinking about balancing out the character from their posture as well. And I still haven't affected the color balance or the saturation of any of these elements. I just played a little bit with the brightness contrast or the levels of the eyes to make it match. Okay, now I'm going to soften a little bit this outer edge of this eye just because it's soft fur with my 100% soft-edged eraser. Just so that looks a little bit more like fur and less like a lasso cutting it out with an X-Acto knife. And I'm using the eraser, and I can even use a smaller size brush because this will mimic more like the variations in hair instead of just using a refined edge kind of feathering. I can even kind of shape it a little bit. I'm using a little hair trimmer. Okay, now I can use that dark gray background as something that's helpful, and I can go to this reference underneath, and I can use contiguous with the white and just delete that white edge. So I start to see what the outside edge might be of the top of my creature's head down through the eye. Okay, now at this point, I'm going to use transform again just to make this jaw kind of match my intentions. So now that kind of seams up and through, I can start to blend it with the back of the head that I have. So I'm going to use that soft eraser, really large, 100% opacity, get rid of that lassoed hard edge, and then slowly, once I get rid of that hard edge, I can take the opacity down and start to transition it from scales into feathers. But I've got this hippo here in the way, so let me just turn that layer off for the moment. There it is. Just so I can show you kind of how to transition with a low opacity eraser once you've gotten rid of your hard edges. Like so. So even very distinct textures you can kind of blend together and transition. And this is before I've done any kind of correcting to the color balance. I'm going to cut out